Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabanson, and welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment. And we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And folks, put on your seatbelts because we got another one of those kind of shows for y'all today. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you follow me on Instagram. My handle is CTABANZ. So let's get into this topic. About 4 or 5 days ago, we produced this show that was centered on the controversy surrounding what Michael Wilbon of ESPN had to say on PTI as it pertains to what the news of Bruce Pearl, the basketball coach, ultimately retiring. He made some comments and various people went at him. We did a show about it. People reacted to it. The show did very well. Excellent. I thought we were done with the story. So today I woke up and I was looking for what to talk about. And I saw a clip that was going pretty viral of Craig Carton of FS1 absolutely going to town on Michael Wilbon. And I immediately said to myself, what is going on here? I thought we were done with this story because initially when we produced that show, we even did the reaction from various conservative commentators and voices responding to what Wilbon had to say. And we did a breakdown to kind of chronicle the story so people would understand it to the best of our abilities. But apparently, Craig Carton just turned up the temperature in the room. He just took it to the next level, to the point where he's now saying that ESPN should fire Michael Wilbon, right? So I then clicked on the video to hear what he was saying, and I'm like, okay, this thing is now going in a totally different direction. And the things that Craig are talking about here are pretty severe. Like, these aren't like play comments. And he started to talk about bring the hostages home and all that. I'm like, what is he talking about? Because apparently Bruce Pearl had made some comments about bringing it. I'm like, so I began to do some research to just try to understand what he was talking about. And apparently Bruce Pearl in a press conference, I don't know if it was the press conference where he was announcing that he was no longer going to be coaching, but he brought up some comments about hostages being held and for them to be released. And apparently what Craig is saying is that Michael Wilbon is against that, and to take it a step further, he's anti-Semitic. And I'm like, whoa, this thing is getting very, very ugly. So what we want to do is, before we get into what Craig said, I want you to listen to the comments that Craig believes Michael Wilbon was alluding to. Take a listen to what Bruce Pearl had to say about the hostages. Take a listen to that.
I get asked a lot how this basketball program has become so competitive over the last 8 years. You're looking at the reasons right here. But for me, I believe it was God's plan to give us this success beyond what we deserve, to give us this platform, to give me an opportunity to just start this press conference really briefly and remind the world that Eden Alexander is still held hostage in Gaza right now. An American held hostage. And there aren't enough people in this country that know his name. So I asked the players if it was okay if I started out this press conference and just called out the name of an American. Bring the hostages home.
Fantastic. So you heard what Bruce had to say. Now we want to play what Craig Carton had to say, and I want you guys to listen to it because a lot of it keeps referencing what Bruce Pearl just said here, right? I want you guys to keep that in the back of your mind of what Bruce just said while you're listening to Craig Carton just absolutely go off on Michael Wilbon. Take a listen to Craig Carton here.
What could have possibly happened for Michael Wilbon to announce to millions of people in America that Bruce Pearl is divisive? Because that's a negative. That's putting a guy down. It's taking a shot at a guy. And I bring you back to March when Auburn was on a great run to their second Final Four in 6 years. He's the greatest coach Auburn's ever had in basketball.
For sure.
Winningest coach over the last 11 years. And he came out at a press conference when they won their Sweet 16 game to advance to the Elite Eight. And he said, before I say what I want to say, I want to let you know that I asked my team, the players on my team, permission to do this. I wanted to make sure my team was okay with what I'm about to do. And they all told me, Coach, go do it. And what he did was he went at used the platform of an NCAA press conference to make people and encourage people to remember that there were still hostages in Gaza. Bruce Pearl's a Jewish American.
Right.
Obviously, there's a greater sensitivity for Jews based on what's going on out there. But he said, I want to make sure everybody remembers Edon Alexander, an Israeli American who at the time was being held hostage. And I made sure my team was okay with it. I asked their permission. The period, stop.
Right.
That's the only thing this is about. So Michael Wilbon finds that to be divisive. Well, shame on you, Michael Wilbon. I don't know that you're an anti-Semite, but you sound like one. Am I being responsible if I accuse you of being one? Because you said that a head coach using his platform to remind people of hostages being held in a foreign land is divisive? When he took the temperature of his own locker room first and asked his players for permission? How is that divisive? Just come out and say it. You hate Trump, he loves Trump, so he's being divisive to your way of thinking. He wants people to remember the atrocities that are happening in Gaza and get our own citizens and all the hostages home. You clearly don't agree with that stance, and I suppose you'd rather they stay there and be brutalized because that, according to you, is somehow divisive. And to make it the comment in the smug manner you made it, and then have your lapdog sit next to you, and Tony Kornheiser, who has nothing at all to say in retort to that comment about Bruce Pearl being divisive and hoping that he got fired. Well, shame on you, and shame on Tony Kornheiser for not standing up to you. And that's what's dangerous about this. We all have opinions. It's our job to give you our opinions. But when you attack a human being with no basis at all, and you're letting your own social views and thoughts and opinions and your political thoughts and opinions now color the way you talk about a different individual, and that individual doesn't have a chance to stand up for himself or defend himself, and you give no context at all to the word divisive, that's dangerous. And if ABC's pulling people off the air like Jimmy Kimmel, maybe they should consider pulling Michael Wilbon off the air. Because what Michael Wilbon did yesterday on PTI, in my opinion, as gross as what Jimmy Kimmel said about Charlie Kirk was, what Wilbon did is worse. Because it's unchecked. There's no context to it. And you're talking about a man who has dedicated his life to educating and coaching young people, predominantly African Americans who happen to play basketball.
Yeah.
All right? And he asked his team for permission to say what he said. And if he was so divisive on the campus of Auburn, I ask you this. Why is Auburn keeping him on the payroll as a consultant? Why is Auburn giving his son a 5-year contract to become their new head coach? It doesn't jive. So again, if you hate his politics, be honest with the audience and tell them that. If you don't want the hostages released, be honest and tell your audience that. If you're anti-Semitic, which you sound like you are, be honest and tell your audience that. But don't attack a man without giving him either the proper context to why you're attacking him or your audience some context to why you took the veiled shot. Bruce Pearl deserves better. And we collectively, as an audience, deserve better than you. You are not, even though you want to be, the self-appointed czar of morality and broadcasting and sports. Get off your high horse and look in the mirror once in a while.
Excellent. So you heard what Greg had to say there. Now, here's where things become a little bit convoluted and confusing. Okay. Wilbon has been making all kind of headlines after the things he said on PTI, right? And I believe that he was responding to some of the things that Bruce Pearl said. But what we want to play now is we want to play what Michael Wilbon had to say initially on PTI that really kick-started this entire thing. Take a listen to Wilbon here.
Happy trails to coaching for Bruce Pearl. The Auburn coach is stepping down to become an ambassador for the athletic department. In his place, the school gave a 5-year deal to his son, Stephen. Pearl is 65. He has had terrific teams at Milwaukee, Tennessee, and Auburn, which made the Final Four last season and in 2019. His decision comes about a year after Tony Bennett did the same thing at UVA. Pearl said he will not run for the U.S. Senate, something that had been rumored.
Tony, he'd become a divisive person, it seems to me, intentionally, and I hope there was pressure to just get him out.
Really?
Yeah,
I always liked him. He was such a great guest. Yeah, we're on the other side on him.
Now, here's the part where it gets confusing. And I think some people are going to get confused. Some people may believe that Wilbon, those comments were in response beyond the news of him no longer being a coach, but a response to what he had to say about the hostages. But in fact, that's not what he was responding to. What had happened was Bruce Pearl had done an interview on Outkick, where he was talking about how divisive former President Barack Obama was, and how people that don't like always saying America's bad and all of that. So I believe this is what Wilbon was talking about, because even in this sound that we're going to play for you, he's talking about division. So what I want to do is play what Pearl said on Outkick that I think really is what Wilbon was talking about. Take a listen to his comments there.
I get so frustrated when I hear what a terrible country we are, how racist we are, how this is not the land of opportunity for everybody. Look, we've got a lot to work on, and there's racism that absolutely does exist, and it's wrong. But it's a lot better for my players than it was for their fathers or for their fathers' fathers or their fathers' fathers. And so I want my guys to recognize there are going to be obstacles, but not roadblocks. And that's what Barack Obama did. However, as our president, other than just love listening to him talk because he's such a great orator, I disagree with so many of his policies. I thought in so many ways, rather than uniting us as a country, even by race, he divided us. Everything was black and white. Everything was the obstacles that were against, my players from being successful. I'm trying to teach my guys, look, I don't want you working at Subway. I want you owning 5 of them. And that's possible. And I think in many ways, Barack Obama told a different story. So it's hard to criticize him, though, because you get a lot of feedback that's really, really negative. My point on Obama the last time was this. He was calling on Israel for a ceasefire. He was calling on Israel to stop the war. He was calling on Israel, to release the hostages. And I'm like, dude, they're not the ones holding the hostages. They didn't start this war. The war and the violence and all the atrocities that go on both sides of the war end the minute that Hamas surrenders, releases the hostages.
Now, I want to now give you guys the background of those comments that Pearl just made on Outkick. I know this is confusing, but we gotta give you guys the full picture here. So essentially what had occurred was former President Barack Obama went on his Twitter and he posted towards the end of July the following, which I want to read for you. While a lasting resolution to the crisis in Gaza must involve a return of all hostages and a cessation of Israel's military operations, these articles underscore the immediate need for action to be taken to prevent the travesty of innocent people dying of preventable starvation. That's what President Obama said. Bruce Pearl then went under that post the day later and responded. The original post by Obama got 20 million views. Pearl's post got a few 100,000 views. Now let me read what Bruce Pearl said in response to President Obama. He said the following: "You gave billions to Iran and Hamas, creating this mess, and not one word from you calling for them to release the hostages, surrender, and end the war. Tell Hamas to 1, quit stealing and reselling aid, 2, stop attacking GHF workers who are feeding Gazans, and 3, leave and end suffering." Now, those were Bruce Pearl's comments in response to what Obama said, which kind of tie in to what he said on Outkick, right? Now remember, he brought up the word the term about the talk about Obama being divisive on Outkick, right? Now I want to get to an article to just quickly go over the backlash that Wilbon received over some of the things that he said. This is from Yahoo. It says, Bruce Pearl facing serious backlash for divisive Barack Obama claim. Auburn basketball coach Bruce Pearl is under fire because of something he said about former President Barack Obama a few days ago. Last week, Pearl ripped Obama for sharing a New York Times article about children starving in Gaza. The outspoken coach made it clear he doesn't want to hear Obama's viewpoint about the crisis in the Middle East. He then went on to say, what is it? The comments, the things that he said. Now, what then happened after was Wilbon made those comments. And then what happened after that was people on the right started going after Michael Wilbon. I want you guys to follow this closely. They started going after Michael Wilbon because of the things that he was saying on PTI. Now, I want to read from this article. It says, right-leaning sports pundits up in arms over ESPN's Michael Wilbon celebrating retirement of divisive basketball coach Bruce Pearl. Now, I want to read some of the things. There's some of the people that disagreed with Wilbon and what they had to say. Now, let's get to one of them here. One person says, this is from Dave Portnoy. He says, what an idiotic comment from Wilbon. Kornheiser shouldn't have rolled over. Apparently, Wilbon only likes athletes/coaches who speak on social issues if they align with his views. Otherwise, you're divisive. What a narrow-minded, small view. Now, I believe Dave Portnoy must not have been aware of what Bruce Pearl said on Outkick. Let's get to the next commentator, Clay Travis. He says, Mike Wilbon says Bruce Pearl has become a divisive figure and he hopes someone forced him out. First, that didn't happen. Second, how was he divisive? The vast majority of people in the SEC agreed with everything he's ever said. That now opened up a whole can of worms. And we did a show about it. Right? Because not everybody is agree with the stuff that he said. He then continues on. Awesome coach, great guy. He's a strong defender of Israel. Sure. But is that divisive? Only if you're free. Get this. Only if you're a free Palestine nut job. Pearl is actually a huge defender of religious liberty. Has always been. Disappointing attack from Wilbon. Now, what Clay just did here was totally disqualify himself from the conversation. He said, only if you're a free Palestine nut job. So if you're amongst the people that say free Palestine, then they should be disqualified. Then you have a problem. Because the very thing that you're fighting is what you're advocating for here. You're saying that Wilbon should be dealt with, or we should be done with him, or you're reprimanding him for his views that are opposing to yours, therefore saying your views should supersede. So anybody that disagrees with you is wrong, come on, knock it off. Then who's to say that he doesn't have the right to believe you're wrong? So that was Clay Travis. He wasn't the only one. Another person chimed in. This is from Tim Brando. Good for Tony here. This show is the best of its kind, and this is why. As for Michael, even when I disagree, I've never found him to be crude, but he, in my opinion, was in this instance. Tony's reaction was priceless and brings the dialogue back to the center. It's good television. Another guy said, this is Danny Kennel. What a lame take. Wilbon puts on full display what's wrong in today's society. He used to like him. ? But because he made his political and religious views known, it makes him a divisive figure. Weak. Him too disqualified himself. Because you're disagreeing with him because of his views. Come on, knock it off, man. This is the games everybody's playing. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of all of this here. Okay? Let's get to the crux of all of this and give you guys my thoughts here. What did Michael Wilbon say for him to be labeled an anti-Semite? What? This is the question now to Greg, or if he ever sees it or anybody else that's align with his thinking. What did he say that is aligned, that is in line with a person that is anti-Semitic? What's the thing that he said? In that 40, 50-second sound that we played, what's the thing that he said? Where did he even mention hostages? Let's take it a step further and see how, this is why it's not good to be labeling people up and down. Let me tell you why. Okay. Bruce Pearl was a big fan of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk has said some things that a lot of blacks find to be offensive. Is Bruce Pearl anti-black? By this line of thinking and by this way of doing things, you are saying that he is anti-black because he supports anti-black rhetoric to a certain extent, even though that's not all Charlie Kirk spoke about. And I don't want to distill him down to just those comments. Is that what you're saying? Well, you would say, no, there's more nuance to it. No, is it? So why is it more nuance when you're saying it, but then there's no nuance when the other person's saying it? I think Greg Carton jumped the gun here, number one. Number two, I think he doesn't have all the information. Because for him to go as far as he did by saying ESPN needs to fire him and saying he sounds like an anti-Semite, I believe you don't have all the information. I believe that you gave an emotional response to something that you haven't really researched thoroughly. It seems like you had a particular worldview in your brain. You heard of what Wilbon said, and you didn't hear everything that Pearl said. Because anybody that is, for example, watched this show that we just produced, and it took a lot of time to put it together, and we've given you all angles of this story, no one would walk away from this and say, oh man, Wilbon, and nobody would walk away from that unless that's what you want to think. All right? Unless that's what you truly want to believe. Divisive. He himself, Bruce Pearl, has used the word divisive. So him saying he's divisive, is it anything different than what Bruce Pearl has said? They both used the word. Next thing, political commentary. Bruce Pearl put his 2 feet inside the political arena and started talking about things about politics. So what's wrong with Wilbon doing the same? They're all in there together. They're at the heart of all of this. Personally, I believe it's all about, I believe I'm right, I believe you're wrong. Both sides. Both sides. There are people that can come after Bruce Pearl because I think he's anti-DEI and all of this stuff and all of that and this and that. Like, how can you be anti-DEI when the majority of your kids in your program are all minorities? I don't get it. How can you be against something that you benefited off? There's a whole bunch of different angles. But in terms of what Greg Carton is advocating here, I think he's absolutely off the money. I think he's off the money. I think he got way too riled up over nothing. And I don't think there's a single thing that Michael Wilbon said that would suggest for him to be labeled as an anti-Semite. But if you are willing to go that far and say, no, Charles, you are wrong, he is one, then I can easily say to you, you're anti-black. Or rather, Bruce Pearl is anti-black. And you're defending, or rather making light, or rather ignoring people that have said, people that support people that view, that have a low worldview of blacks. Do you see? Would you agree? If we're to accept your assertion that Wilbon is anti-Semitic, you must be willing to accept the assertion that you support those that are anti-black. Of course you wouldn't. You would say, no, that's ridiculous. Then you would begin to explain yourself, right? That's what I'm doing here. And I think he jumped the gun way too quickly. Way too quickly. You threw out a term that did not even need to be thrown out. I mean, you just didn't need to do that. Because I don't see, unless you have some new evidence or you have some new sound of where Wilbon specifically said, don't bring back the hostages or anything like that, then you need to just be quiet. You need to be quiet because I don't know where you're getting all of this from. Personally, I don't know where. These are my thoughts. Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we'll catch you guys on the next show. Peace.